Hi, everybody, I'm Dave Briggs here at the New York Stock Exchange. The first debate of the 2024 presidential cycle was arguably the most consequential in modern American politics, effectively ending President Biden's presidency and upending the race. Now Kamala Harris hopes to define her campaign, which to this point has relied on slogans and speeches. Political Deputy National Editor Zach Montellaro with us now. 5 things that matter. Zach, good to see you. Where does the race stand today? How consequential is this debate?
Yeah, so the race today is incredibly close. When President Biden was still in the race, you could pretty comfortably say Trump had a narrow but comfortable lead. Now it's basically a coin flip between the vice president and former President Trump. Over this weekend, we saw a poll from the New York Times and Siena College that had the former president up 2 points over the vice president. National polling averages generally have the vice president up anywhere from 1 to 3 points. So this race is about as close as you can get. Well, as for how consequential this debate will be, well, debates don't matter until they do. Just ask Joe Biden, as you alluded to it. This could all be nothing. We could come out of this on Wednesday morning and the race is exactly as it is right now. And that's, I suspect, where it will be very close. But who knows? Someone could blow up again. We've already seen it once this cycle. Who's to say it can't happen a second time?
Yeah, and they are in Philly, and Pennsylvania largely holds the entire race right there. So Vice President Harris has given just one interview with her VP pick and largely focused on personal narratives. What is her strategy?
Yeah, so for the vice president, she still has the opportunity to introduce herself to Americans. That same New York Times poll, about 20 to 25% of Americans said they still don't know enough about Vice President Harris to have an opinion on her, to make up their mind. They want to learn more. So for the vice president, this is really her first and biggest opportunity to introduce herself to the American public. I, of course, as a member of the media, want to see all politicians do more interviews with the media. But a debate is just going to get so many more eyeballs than an interview with you or I or CNN or anybody. So this, for the vice president, is reintroduce herself to the country that's kind of, maybe slipped away from her since 2020. She's the vice president. She's an incredibly powerful political figure, but she's not at the forefront, or at least wasn't at the forefront of everyday political life. Reintroduce herself and kind of prosecute the case against Trump. And I use the word prosecute intentionally. She was a former prosecutor. In her convention speech and the ads we've seen, she's tried to hit Trump over his charges, over his role in overturning Roe v. Wade. So her goal: introduce herself and also, take it to Trump directly in a way that Democrats could see her doing in a way that Biden could not.
The expectations are well north of 50 million will watch in some form tomorrow night. So given his recent social media posts about prosecuting political opponents, what is the Trump strategy?
Yeah, and when I said prosecute for the vice president, I meant that metaphorically. Yeah. The former president means that literally. To the degree that Trump has a strategy, we've now seen almost a decade worth of debates from Donald Trump at this point. He doesn't have a strategy. His strategy is to be Donald Trump. Donald Trump has followed his gut political instincts time and time and time again. And it more or less has worked out for him. At least it worked out for him in 2016, didn't work out for him in 2020. But Donald Trump does not have a strategy. Donald Trump does what Donald Trump wants to do. His social media posts have certainly been more on the outlandish side recently. It's kind of a return to form for the former president. And his goal, I guess, is to unnerve the current vice president, rather. I believe the vice president and Donald Trump have never actually been in the same room together before. So he's probably going to want to try to get her off her game, get her off her notes, and attack her as well. But Donald Trump does whatever Donald Trump wants to do. His camp has said he's not even doing debate prep formally.
That is extraordinary, and they certainly want him to stick with policy. Don't hold your breath for that happening. What can you tell us about Kamala Harris's past debate performance, in particular in 2020?
Yeah, her 2020 debate performance was uneven. And in the primary, especially, it's a different audience, literally, in this sense. It's the Democratic primary electorate and not all Americans. But she had incredible highs. That girl was me moment when she actually was ironically attacking President Joe Biden was probably the peak of her campaign. That when she, if it looked like she was going to capture the nomination, it started in that moment. But she had an uneven performance throughout. Some of my colleagues here at Politico wrote about a fight on stage she had with Tulsi Gabbard, which kind of dragged her down a little bit because even at the time, then Congresswoman Gabbard and Vice President Harris were not on the same level So she's always had an uneven debate performance. What we're looking for her to do now, after 4 years in the vice presidency, is kind of show that she's no longer the same person who ran for president 4 years ago. She's had a lot of experience now on the national stage and on the international stage. So how does that change her preparation? What does she do going into this? It was uneven in 2020. So her aides and allies are certainly looking for a more steady performance this go around.
Yeah, she's never been great off script, off teleprompter, so that will be the ultimate test for her. Now, you and I would love these things to come down to policy. They almost never do, rarely if ever. So what's the X factor here in your estimation, and what do you make of the much discussed muted mics matter?
Yeah. So that was the big fight heading up into the debate: is will mics be muted? The vice president's campaign wanted them unmuted. And the reason for that is probably pretty straightforward. They wanted to capture Donald Trump potentially going off the rails. They wanted people to hear that. In the last debate, when President Joe Biden kind of fell apart, Trump kind of stepped back and kind of let him damage himself to a degree. I'm not, I don't want to excuse or just write off all the things that Trump did in the debate, but President Biden kind of, gave himself the rope in the last debate. This time, the vice president's camp wanted people to hear Donald Trump and wanted people to hear her, or potentially hear him interrupting and insulting her. They didn't get that. Right? The mics will be muted, at least to an extent. ABC, the host of the debate, has said they'll leave it open, in the middle of crosstalk. But it's kind of all of this is expectation setting. It's all trying to set expectations for members of the media, for members of the public, on what a good debate performance looks like, both for yourself and for your opponent. So, all these minute details we'll always forget about, 12 hours after the debate, probably, on who wants the mics muted, who wants them unmuted, who wants them standing. Is it a town hall style? What really matter for Trump and for Harris is, those 5 or 10 standout moments that end up not only happening during the debate, but get recircled in news coverage and on TV ads potentially as well.
Yeah, let's be honest. It's that one viral tic tac that's likely a gaffe by one of the candidates that will ultimately decide this, and who knows, could the race as well. Political Deputy National Editor Zach Montellaro, appreciate it. Enjoy the chat. Let's talk after this debate and see how we did. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.